I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. My next guest appeared the last time incognito in heavy backlighting, and the reason why I had him on because this is the only person I've ever had on like this. He just has good contacts, good information. He said he would come out and reveal himself on USA Watchdog. That hasn't happened yet. That's not going to happen this time. This is my next guest. It's V, the Guerilla Economist. It's just to give you, spoiler alert. And V, first of all, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Greg, I'm doing great. I'm in my mother's basement.
Yeah, no, I know you're not. Well, and this is what I wanted to tell you all while V's on there, so you know he's listening to this. He works for a big company. One of the things they handle is gold, precious metals, yep. A very big company. And he can't reveal himself yet because of his constraints with his company. He's going to.
I will.
He will. And he will do it on USA Watchdog, right?
I will do it on USA Watchdog.
Yeah. But
promise. That's to all the listeners out there. The Guerilla will be coming out and making his debut right here on USA Watchdog with Greg Hunter.
Okay, then good. And the reason why I'm putting him on because I thought, he's got good sources, good information, and he's got good information and good sourcing about what's going on in the background because he works internationally. He also has written for publications in the geopolitical and military sphere as well. And I want to talk to you about what's going on in the Middle East. But V, that said, you will come out later in the future. You got good inside sources. So let's start with your sources.
Yeah.
And what's going on because all of a sudden. You've got Drunken Miller and you've got J.P. Morgan and all these people telling people to buy gold.
Correct.
And they're almost freakishly panicked about this.
Yeah.
What is going on? What do they see that's not coming out in the Wall Street Journal and the USA Today and things like that?
Well, here's the thing. Let's put this in context, right? When Drunken Miller and JPM comes out and says, hey, buy gold, people like us who are in the alternative sphere, we hear that signal and we say to ourselves, okay, we got to go and we need to get actual physical gold. We need to grab it. We need to hold on to it. Those of us with means would want to vault it, have it secured in the right jurisdiction. But that's us, and that's our thinking. But the average
which incidentally is the right thinking.
It is the correct thinking.
Yeah.
But
you work for a bona fide, big time global company, and one of the things they do is precious metals. And I don't mean sell it at retail.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. We,
right.
We do, institutional investors, sovereigns, so.
Just wanted to make that perfectly clear. Go ahead.
Correct. So when the average American hears Drunken Miller on, and CNBC parrots it, and when J.P. Morgan says, hey, buy gold, okay, it's the same thing as a prescription drug commercial, Greg. Okay, it's ask your doctor. So what is the average Joe going to do? He's going to ask his what? Broker. He's going to walk into JPM. He's going to say, hey, how can I buy gold? And what is JPM and Drunken Miller offering these people that want to get into gold? ETFs, paper, contracts. That's basically what they're offering them. Drunken Miller is all in ETFs. It's the most asinine thing in the world. Now, the question is, why do they want people in ETFs? Simple. They want to flood that market with the gold papers market as much as possible, because it helps them to keep the churning and the Ponzi scheme going. Because we all know there's no gold in the COMEX. I mean, I've said it. There's so many other pundits have come forward and said it. There's not enough gold to cover any of the contracts. Hardly any of the contracts in the COMEX whatsoever, Greg. So the way you got to keep the Ponzi scheme going, and I've said this so many times, your Ponzi scheme is only as good so long as you have a willing idiot. As soon as you run out of willing idiots, then the Ponzi scheme is over.
So your reading of this, so you and I and anybody else who has physical metals or thinks physical metals, the coinage is a way to protect yourself, you and I say on this and go, oh my gosh, I tell people to buy gold. But in the background, in the levels that you are, in the boardrooms that you're interfacing with and things like that, they're saying, well, they're just telling them to buy paper.
Correct.
They're not even telling them to buy mining shares.
No, nothing. It's simply paper. What do I do? Oh, yeah, here, buy some GLD. Hey, buy some SLV. Buy this, buy that. That's all they're doing. They're moving people into paper, which is basically leading the lambs to slaughter, so to speak.
Because when the axe drops on GLD and I guess SLV, I guess when the city has, J.P. Morgan has SLV.
Bingo.
And Citi has GLD. So when the axe drops and there's all these redemptions out of there, they're just going to say, yeah, well, it's read the contract. It's not there. We didn't really have to have the gold and the silver, right?
Bingo.
So they're going to be just buying this paper stuff, and there's no way to really redeem it. It's not really a reflection of all this gold or all the silver in the vaults, right?
Absolutely correct. And to take it one step further, Greg, if you read the fine print on any stock certificate, you're just a beneficiary owner. In other words, they could change your ownership at a moment's notice without any sort of interaction with you or letting you know or giving you the heads up. So it's a win-win situation for the most toxic banks in the world like JP Morgan. You can ask for better. Hey, buy gold. Okay, how do I get it? Here's some paper.
Well, then what's the deal with JP Morgan buying all the silver? Evidently, that's not in SLV. The silver they're buying is outside of SLV. Is that right, or is that wrong?
No, that's correct. The silver that they are getting is outside of SLV. What they're going to do with it is the multi-trillion-dollar question. Will they keep it? Are they trying to pay off someone else that they owe assets to, or they owe money to, so to speak? We've seen J.P. Morgan do all sorts of things where they're one week their vault is up, 40,000 ounces. Next week their vault is down to 5,000 ounces. We've seen some drastic climbs and declines in J.P. Morgan with unexpected, with basically no record of where any of this stuff is really winding up at. So my theory is I think they owe the Chinese, or they owe some international entity either the silver or the asset value of that silver to them, and this is what's going on.
We've had these things in the mainstream press. For example, when Saudi Arabia was threatening to sell, this $750 billion in U.S. assets, I suspect much of that is Treasury bonds. And Josh Earnest blurts out, well, the whole system could implode. He's something to that. That's not an exact quote, but it could bring down the system, something like that. And then also, Donald Trump on the campaign trail has blurted out more than once, we could have an economic meltdown. We could have a financial meltdown. We could have a crash in the markets. So this is in the vernacular in the mainstream press with, real people that you're seeing, which gets glossed over. Nobody ever asked Trump, hey, what do you mean by that? Isn't that amazing? They'll ask him about stupid Trump University or Corey Lewandowski, but they won't ask him, hey, you just said that the whole world economy could collapse. What do you mean by that? Of course, that press is prostitutes. But anyway, to you. So this is a real fear, correct? Are we on our way? Are we edging closer to some sort of a collapse?
Every day, every night. Greg, to be quite honest with you, economically speaking, when you look at the global stage, it's not one event. A lot of guys, when I was coming up in this thing early on, I started seeing a lot of things, and I was still a chart watcher, looking at charts. Then I woke up to the fact that everything's manipulated at this point, so charts go out the window. But what I do see is it's not one event. There are multiple triggers everywhere. If Deutsche Bank goes belly up, Greg, tonight, as I'm talking to you tonight, when they go belly up, if they go belly up tonight, that could send a cascade of bank failures throughout the entire Eurozone, which will blow back right here through London into New York, and we will be in the absolute crap storm. We'll be in the middle of it. So it could happen at any time. The Saudis, they decide to go nuts and say, hey, you know what, we're going to dump $750 billion. Saudi Arabia is interesting in the sense that we don't really know how much, or, it's not published, so to speak, how much U.S. treasuries they actually own. Because it's one of those bolt holes. It's another one of those facilities, so to speak, Greg, where dumped U.S. treasuries are hidden. So if they start dumping U.S. treasuries, it can cause a run on the bond market. It can cause a massive fissure, massive blowbacks, okay? Then you have also what's going on, the derivative interest rate swaps, which are also tied into bonds, which are also tied into the repurchasing markets. All these things will bring into pressure, and all you see is nothing but triggers everywhere. So Donald Trump is right. We could be in a financial meltdown, and you know what? It amazes me that the media. Well, it doesn't amaze me. It doesn't surprise me at this point. I know it doesn't surprise you either, Greg, that the media would rather question him about Trump steaks and Trump University and why his clothing is being pulled out of Macy's versus, hey, you just mentioned the economy can go, belly up. We could be in a financial meltdown. Nobody even brings that into account. It's unbelievable, man.
Are the people that you work for, or do they have some kind of a clock or an inside, you know, timing on when a collapse could happen? Are they in the dark, or do they have a pretty? Do they think it's before the end of the year, after the year? I mean, there's been a couple of different predictions, but nobody's gone past 2017.
Yeah, same thing with these guys. 2017 is a very killer. It's an absolutely monumental time that they've put on their calendar. You know, what I was told by them is, hey, V, you know, this fall is looking pretty bad. Okay,
so it could be this fall too.
Yeah, this fall I think we're going to see a lot of events, and then 2017 is I think when this thing really begins to come apart. You know, one of the things I said was that by the end of 2015 the dollar will be completely undermined as a world reserve currency, and it did just like that, became undermined. You've had a lot of alternative payment systems. You have a lot of the infrastructure for alternative payment systems come into place. The Chinese SIPs, that's alive and active. That's huge. You know, the Fed wire is done.
It's the China International Payment System.
Correct.
CHIPS.
Yeah.
CHIPS.
Yeah. And that's a huge thing. And that when that's announced and that full integration with SWIFT, people don't realize. I often said that the oceans that separate us from the rest of the world, the Atlantic and the Pacific, will become the moats, Greg, the moats of our isolation. Because that integration with SIPS and SWIFT, it takes the Fed wire out of the window. Now, if I'm in Iran or if I'm in, Uzbekistan and I want to wire, money to somebody in Azerbaijan, it has to go through SWIFT, which has to go through the Fed wire, and they got to release the funds. So and if I'm a country that's on the sanctions list, well, you know what? Tough luck. You're SOL, and you can't get any sort of funding. You're screwed. But thanks to the SIPs and the full integration with SWIFT, the dollar has been completely circumvented. Huge news, Greg. Huge.
What does that look like? What does that mean when people say, hey, the dollar's been circumvented? To the man on the street, what would that look like to the guy in, St. Charles, Missouri?
Well, it's just less dollars used in transactions. It's just less fees and less, the money velocity that's needed here in the dollar is continuing to plummet because of its lack of use. And so what's going to look like to the average Joe on the street, it's not something he's going to see right away. But it's going to eventually lead towards inflation. It's going to lead to hyperinflation, absolutely.
Oh, because everybody will be dumping that. They say, oh, we don't need these dollars. We're going to use the yuan.
Yeah, they're going to use the yuan. And the fact that there's so many swap facilities that the Chinese have set up, and, thanks to the BRICS Bank, now called the New Development Bank, what they've set up globally with all sorts of, swap facilities, they could just trade in their own currencies. They don't even have to use the dollar anymore. So that's less dollars in the system. That's less dollars pursuing goods and less dollars pursuing services. This is huge.
What's the tipping point here? I mean, what's the West going to do about this? Are they just, this is a mess. We're careening towards evidently that would be a collapse in purchasing power for the dollar, correct?
Big time.
What are they going to do?
The only thing the West is doing, and what they've been doing for quite some time now, Greg, is continuing on this idiotic British Roman model of empire expansion. So what we're doing is we're going into the South China Seas, okay, and we're going into territorial waters that China's had since 600 BC, and they were going over there saying, "Oh, look, Chinese aggression in the South China Seas. Look, we're creating trouble." That's what we're doing. I think it was Pepe Escobar. I love what he says. He calls it exceptional stand. He calls it, the empire of chaos. That's what he calls the U.S. So we're basically going out and we're doing what we do best, which is our major export, which is war, causing trouble, amongst the other things that we're also involved in that are nefarious in nature. That's what we do. It's the only thing that we know how to do these days. We don't have the talent pool. We don't have the type of guys in government. We do in the private sector, but in government that can handle a Xi Jinping. That can, stand toe-to-toe with a Vladimir Putin. That can cut deals, so to speak, as Donald Trump would say, right? We don't have that. So what we have is a bunch of neocons and a bunch of sycophants that all they do is rely on the number one means of export, which is intimidation, war, subterfuge, graft, fraud, theft. That's what we're relying upon. And we're thinking that's, this is, we're still the big boy on the block. And we're not the big boy on the block anymore, Greg.
We're the empire of fraud. I mean, the fraud
we really are.
Is stunning.
Yeah,
fraud. I want to come back, speaking of fraud, I want to come back to Deutsche Bank, means that's, really in your wheelhouse. A lot of stuff's in your wheelhouse. But they come out and admit they're a primary dealer of treasuries, which I looked up. I thought, well, I wonder what's consistent. I think all these banks are primary dealers of treasury.
Yes.
Nova Scotia, HSBC,
Bingo.
Deutsche Bank. Of course, gold makes treasuries don't look so good. So what's going on with that? I mean, they just had another Deutsche Bank trader in London. Some guys, I think a couple of guys get sentenced to 4.5 years in jail for, insider trading. What's going on with Deutsche Bank?
I mean, Deutsche Bank's a ginormous mess, man. I mean, when you look at what they're doing, I mean, they've come out and said, hey, you know what? Yeah, we've been manipulating the gold market, the silver market. Not only have we been doing it, we're going to help, point out the other banks that are also involved in it, Scotia Bank, Standard Charter, and one other that escapes me at the moment.
HSBC. I didn't hear Standard Charter. That was a new one. So yeah. So they have everything but the American banks, which
they got everything but the major criminals like J.P. Morgan, UBS being another criminal bank, Credit Suisse another criminal. So they got everybody. They forgot about Barclays as well. I mean,
how long can this? I mean, this is a stunning admission, and it just seems like nothing's really happening. What do you see behind the scenes with your connections? Is this bringing down the manipulation? Is this going to stop the manipulation, or does it go until gold goes, parabolic?
This thing is, I see a slow rise in precious metals, and this, thankfully, because of the Shanghai gold price fix, which went active April 19th. There's over 56 major players that are involved in the Shanghai price fix, and what that's doing, and one of the biggest players in there is ICBC, which is the biggest, largest investment bank on the planet. It's a Chinese bank. They're not only involved in the Shanghai gold price fix, but they're also involved in the London price fix now. They're going to be the bridge of arbitrage, so to speak. Okay, so you're going to see a drain on London. You're going to see eventually they're going to vacuum the London price fix directly in alignment with the Shanghai price fix, as it will be a slow climb in precious metals. I'm thinking probably 1,500 by this fall is what I'm looking at. We're testing 1,300 right now. 1,300 is a very, very well defended area for gold, and $1,300 an ounce. I expect it to fall within the next month or so. And then it's going to be off to the races right after that, Greg, man. I mean, I think this thing will be a slow tractor beam pulling the London price fix along with the spot price there. But once it does, this thing will, as you said, Greg, go parabolic.
So you think at some point it'll just, I mean, we'll have lockout up limit, lockout days on the upside.
Bingo. I totally believe it. I agree with my buddy Big Swear, and I also agree with my friend Rob Kirby as well. These guys will, I mean, they'll keep pumping away at low, spot prices, and then it's just going to shoot to the moon because there's just going to be no metal. I mean, even now, Greg. I mean, spot price, $12.70, $12.80, right? Yeah. Premiums are going through the roof now.
What are the premiums? I mean, I'm not talking about coins now. Some people say, well, I can go to my coin store and get. Now, you're talking about bars. You're talking about tonnage.
Yeah, it's over 20% in some cases, man.
20% premium, so, wow. Cases,
yeah.
So it's already at $1,400 or $1,500 an ounce.
Some bullion, I'll be honest with you, like, the company that I'm aligned with, we're a major distributor to one of the three biggest distributors here in the United States that supplies all your coin dealers, your private dealers, the whole nine yards. We've run into shortages on certain bullion where we'd have to wait, 1 to 2 weeks because the refineries are not getting that raw material. The supply chain is starting to get pinched down to the refiner level. So that's a serious thing. It's never happened.
There's no elasticity. I mean, they get it in, they refine it, boom, it's sold.
Boom, gone. It's gone.
There's no storage. There's no, we'll go in the back and get you. No, there's no back.
There is no back. It's in and it's out. So an order comes in. We're at Auger Heuer's, and in Switzerland, we're in one of those facilities. We're getting it right there. So there's no, hey, wait 1 second, we go to the back and get it for you. No, it's it's getting refined. We're waiting a week for the material to get refined. Then we're sending in our armored transports to pick it up and deliver it to wherever the client wants to have it vaulted.
So it gets refined and it gets palleted and don't put it in a warehouse. We'll be right over.
Bingo. It's out the door, man. It's out the door on a ship. Okay.
How long can that go on for?
Not long, man. It is so tight right now. We've never seen inventories this long. I mean, this low, and things are just getting harder and harder to get.
What do you suppose the demand? What if you said, why in the heck is all of a sudden people are clamoring for physical metal? What is it? I mean, Manarino told me last week. He says, J.P. Morgan telling people to buy gold. You know what that means? I said, the debt's no good. He goes, bingo. Yes, the debt's no good.
Right.
The asset's no good. Why do you suppose?
Greg is absolutely right about that. Greg Manarino. Right.
He's a smart guy. So are you.
Right.
But why do you suppose there's this big? It just seems like after the first of the year and the first few months, all of a sudden, pow! There's this big demand. What is driving this big demand?
The biggest demand out of this is the large institutional investors, the sovereigns that are predominantly in the East, as well as the populace, man. I mean, you have the governments that are in China that are basically telling the people, in China and Singapore and in India, it's so culturally inured amongst these people to go out and buy gold. Whenever the price dips, they buy it. They feel like it's being gifted, so they get it. So there's a massive amount of drain that's going on there. Plus Russia. Russia's been buying feverishly. I mean, has anyone seen what the Russian central bank has been stockpiling in terms of, last month they were the biggest buyers of gold last month.
Did they get 500 million ounces? Is that what they got?
Something like that. It was a massive amount. These guys are just just payloading the gold, man, at this point. So because they're getting ready because they're feverishly preparing for a dollar collapse, and that's something that the average Joe on the street in the U.S. is, all right, I got to go get the gold. Let me call up J.P. Morgan, talk to my broker, and my broker says I got to go get some ETFs. So that's the complete dichotomy. We have such a value in the philosopher's stone, which is basically the paper instruments. We believe in it. We think there's value to it. It has some sort of worth. And they don't realize it's just nothing but a collateralized instrument that's been over-leveraged to the hilt.
You're talking about collapse in the buying power. Could it happen suddenly in an overnight or a week or two that, all of a sudden, and I guess the proxy with that would be oil, that we'd have $45 a barrel oil, and all of a sudden we might have, in a couple of weeks, we might have $60 a barrel oil.
Yeah, man. This is something that can move rapidly. The type of technological world that we're living in, the rapidity of the way the markets are moving today, thanks to high frequency trading, this could happen very, very quickly. This is not like in the 1920s when you had a crash coming in and it takes a day, a few days, a week or two, to really feel the effects. No, this will be absolutely rapid at a speed that we've never ever seen before. We don't even know. All the speed of collapse that we're talking about, Greg, is theoretical at this point because we really don't fully know how fast this thing will move.
And this is not an if.
Oh no, this is not an if. This is a when at this point.
And your guys, are they prepared? Are the people that you're interfacing with, are they pretty much prepared? I mean, you can't just buy gold. I mean, you have to buy everything, right? Everything that is physical, water, food, PB, housing. You have to have everything. Is that that's what Captain Austin Fitz was saying? Get out of debt, own your house. Own your car title. I mean, is that what? I mean, on the level you're talking about, these guys, 200 ounces of gold just doesn't really help them. They have millions, if not billions, of dollars, right?
Yeah, these guys are large players. The majority of them are out of the United States. They don't even live here. They're not U.S. citizens, so they have that advantage working for them. In terms of the U.S. citizen, I mean, how do you own your house? How do you do that? I mean, you pay your mortgage off, but God knows who owns your mortgage, right? Right? Who owns the title, right? I mean, you can pay it off, but, are you actually getting the real title, or are you just getting some fictitious digital derivative of a title, which really has no bearing or value in court?
Are the people here? You have to release it. So the people releasing it are the actual owners. Actually, a friend of mine said he went to a closing. He said, "Hey, have you had something where somebody, and this is in here in the United States. He said, "Have you had somebody pay off a house, and then a week or so later, you paid off Wells Fargo or whoever, and then a week or so later, Citigroup or J.P. Morgan would say, 'Hey, you paid the wrong people. That's our tranche of debt.'"
Bingo.
And she said, "Yes."
And we're foreclosing on you.
And she said, "Yes, it's happened."
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have property taxes. You stop. You do all that, and then you don't pay your property taxes. You'll find out real quick who owns your home. So
that's right.
It's so my thing. The best thing for most Americans to do is for those of little means, of course, holding precious metals. Those of significant means, those who have the ability, you got $100,000 or more sitting around, get yourself an offshore asset protected trust in a T8 tax zone, that's basically has the highest amount of security and secrecy. I'm not talking about Panama Papers here, but and then have it vaulted in the right jurisdiction. Switzerland, Singapore, Hong Kong, great locales, great jurisdictions that have some very high, privacy laws, very strict banking laws. That's what I would do, But that's just my opinion.
Some people just would be well off just buying a few rolls of gold or silver and just vault it right somewhere in their backyard. I mean,
absolutely.
But you think the timing, and then the last question here, you think the timing is close, and there's a lot of triggers that could make the timing, boom, instantaneous.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, take your pick, man. You look at the derivative market, that's fissuring. The bond market's coming apart. What's going on with the banks, with Deutsche Bank in particular. You got triggers there. You have massive issues. I mean, the bond market in Japan, if that thing goes belly up tomorrow, I mean, you're going to have massive reverberations ripping through the whole entire, continental United States. There's nothing but triggers. It's like, picture, if you will, all of us were walking across a rice paddy, but there's 1,000,001 landmines in those rice paddies. So, maybe one or two of us might make it on the other end, but damn it, man, the majority of us are going to get blown to pieces. That's how volatile the world is, economically speaking, today. It's hanging on by a thread, and that's no BS, man. That's real. That's real numbers, Greg. That's real facts. It's not this is not like, oh, it's some conspiracy theory, let's see what happens, everything's as it should be. No, it's not. It's not as it should be. The world at this stage is ready, pretty much, for the next phase of economic evolution, so to speak.
One other last thing I wanted to ask about, too, the war card. A lot of people have said, Gerald Celente and other people have said, when all else fails, they take you to war. Celente says that's his quote. Good one. Do you think we're closer to some kind of a war in the South China Sea, or do you think we're closer to war in the Middle East? Do you think they're ready to light some candles off somewhere to cover over the fact that they've mismanaged everything terribly and, the war caused the collapse? Are we close to war somewhere in the world?
I think there are factions within the government, these neocons, these politicians who haven't even fired a BB gun in their lifetime. They're doing what they can to rabble rouse in order to create some sort of a conflict that they think that they can somehow manage and get away from, and blame that on the economic collapse. But I think also a lot of things have happened internationally where conflict is pretty much in some way kind of off the table, and I'll tell you why. Number one, there is pushback from people within the military that are trying to stop an escalation of conflict with other major superpowers like Russia and China.
This is your sources telling you that
yeah.
You got inside sources saying, "Hey, we're not."
Absolutely, they're pushing back at this. If we were to enter into a conflict with the Chinese and the Russians, I'll tell you right now, they would wipe the floor with us. They would wipe the floor with us. I mean, what do we have in terms of equipment? We have antiquated pieces of technology. We have our latest fighter jet that's flying around right now. It's like it's a 40-year-old design. The ones that we're working on right now with the F-35 is a total joke. The F-22 can't fly above 25,000 feet without choking out its pilots, and they're fielded in such few numbers it wouldn't even matter. It's a joke, man. It's an absolute joke, and this is what the neocons want to do. Our military is stretched too thin. I'm hoping that there won't be, and I'm hoping that it is indeed off the table, that there will be no conflict. doesn't mean these guys are not going to try. That's the only issue, Greg. So anything can happen. That will happen, so to speak.
Martial law means you have military inside sources. And just a little bonus question here, because people talk about this a lot. Martial law. Captain Austin Fitz says, "Hey, listen, Obama can't do that." I just had her on last week. She said,
I agree with her.
She says she can't do that by himself unless the big dark powers say that's what they want or that's what they need. Is that in your sources in whatever? Is that a possibility? Martial law, if we have a financial calamity, they get so bad that everything gets shut down. Rickards, Jim Ray, he's another guest of mine, said they're going to shut the system down. It'll all shut down. I mean, the stock market, the bond market, your banks. Are you hearing anything? What are you hearing about martial law from your military sources?
Well, I'll tell you right now, if they initiated martial law, the question will be how long can you maintain it, number one. Number two, we're so stretched thin, where are you going to get this martial law from? Number three, Americans are still the most well-armed population on planet Earth. And number four is, you could only continue this martial law so long as you're able to pay them. The question is, how does a broken, solvent government with an absolutely worthless currency going to pay anybody to control, quarantine, or quell a population? It's just not going to happen, man. I just don't see it. Now that people say, well, they're gonna call in the UN, and the UN's going to come here with their troops. Are you kidding me?
They're broke too.
First of all, we are the UN. Secondly, is this? They'll say, well, they're going to send off the Europeans. Really, the Europeans, the same guys who who donated 100 troops to go fight in Iraq. Those guys, the Europeans who who stand around watching their women get raped by Islamo-fascists, rape refugees out in Europe. Those guys are going to come over here and do what? Face a well-armed American population? No, they don't want no beef in that. In terms of martial law, it's a wonderful fear idea, and a lot of people are thinking about this fear, but nobody asks the economic question: who's going to pay for it? What happened to Katrina? What happened to the cops? Well, they went home. I'm not doing this crap. I'm going home.
Okay,
hey, Mom, what's for dinner?
That's right.
Nobody's going to do this crap.
Do you think the whole martial law idea is a big bunch of fear-mongering to kind of keep
It's
people?
huge, man. I think it's huge. They're like, well, there's FEMA camps. Well, okay. Well, there's FEMA camps. Okay. Well, what people don't look. Here's the thing, man. I've been around these guys. Okay, these military planners, this, that, and the other, blah blah blah. These guys who with links and connections up to the defense departments and stuff. The way they think is this, Greg. Okay. People ask me the question, well, what about Rex 84? What about all those FEMA camps? The answer is this. The military-industrial complex is not a conglomeration of the most brilliant talent on planet Earth. These are just a bunch of guys who are greedy, soft, really stupid. They've gotten very slovenly, and all they want to do is make money. Look at the F-35. It's a pet project. It's a modern-day bridge to nowhere. It's a multi-trillion-dollar debacle.
I know.
But there's so many people profiting from it, making millions and hundreds of millions of dollars off this project. Same thing with this whole FEMA camp nonsense, right? You got these FEMA camps. Who's going to staff them? Number one. Number two, the military-industrial complex, they're always creating and looking for enemies. Well, after the Soviet Union fell, they needed more enemies. They created terrorism. That's not enough. Now they're saying, okay, we need to have the American public as a terror group, as the enemy. So they create these camps. But you got to understand the way these people work, Greg. They always have to create things, whether real or fictitious. Okay? Case in point, the best example I could give is this, and I gave this analogy. I said, if the oceans of the world dried up tomorrow, Greg, the military-industrial complex, in their thinking, they will still be manufacturing submarines, and they'll have a bucket line from a municipal county, from a municipal, drinking water supply, and they'll have a bucket line, and they'll have people pouring buckets on the submarine that's at port. Why? Because that's just what we do. That's just what we do. Do you see? That's the thinking. So no one has ever. I'm never able to get somebody in front of me and say, give me the economic reasons of how this can be pulled off. No one is able to explain it. But there's going to be martial law. Millions of troops. They're coming for your guns. Dude, there's 600,000 gun owners in Wisconsin. That makes Wisconsin the 6th largest army on the planet. You're going to come for their guns? How? With what manpower? Oh, they're going to work asymmetrically, and they're going to, lock the borders down. And They can't control the borders now. Who they're going to lock it down with, and who's going to pay for it? No one asks the most simplest question: who's going to foot the bill? How are they going to pay for it? With what? Deflated dollars that you can wipe your rear end with? Because toilet paper will be more valuable. Or maybe we pay everybody in Charmin Ultra. Maybe we pay them with that. I mean, nobody thinks about this stuff. No, it's when this thing goes bust, it's going to be up to the American people to fix it. Will there be chaos? Yes. Will there be massive loss of life when the collapse happens? Yes. In large cities, you're going to have people die from starvation, dehydration, violence, rioting, and lack of medication. That's going to be your factors. Not some foreign army. Now there's 20,000 troops in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Russian troops. The Russians are not even here. That's a debunked story, but yet you still have people that are parroting that, Greg. It's ridiculous.
No martial law.
No.
Martial law will be you're on your own.
You're on your own. And you better, maybe you have a friend named Marshall and he's with you and you guys are on your own.
The Guerilla Economist, roguemoney.net. Thanks for coming on. Very enlightening. Now you see why I decided to have V on, because trying to harvest those connections and harvest the information from those connections. V, thanks for coming on. Thanks for making a pledge to come out, as it were, and reveal your identity someday on USA Watchdog. But I'm very glad to book you, and thank you for revealing yourself to me and giving me all your inside information. That way I know you're a real person, and I can tell it to my viewers. But
and you've seen my face. So
I know I've seen your face, and I know your resume, and I know who you're working for, which I promise you I wouldn't say.
And I know
why you're doing what you're doing. So V, the Guerilla Economist at roguemoney.net. Thanks for coming on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg.